What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So I know that y'all have been waiting a couple years for this video. I have been talking about doing this video for years, but we are officially, as of today, doing The Curse of Lake Lanier Part 2. Part 2 with the real story. Now, if you've seen Part 1, I kind of give an overview of like, there's a conspiracy that there was a, this black town that they kind of took over and they kind of flooded the people out, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know, it's a conspiracy, I'm not sure. And then it's like after that video low-key went viral, these stories start coming out about like the truth of it. And it was so hard, even when it first happened, it was so hard to find anything about this town under Lake Lanier. So I'm here today to tell you what I learned, to tell you what I know in regards of the real curse of Lake Lanier. All right, so without further ado, it's already been about 3 years. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so Lake Lanier was formerly known, the area of Lake Lanier was formerly known as Oscarville. Oscarville was similar into the aspects of Black Wall Street. If you don't know what Black Wall Street is, look up the Tulsa Massacre. Envision that in your head, but in Georgia. Okay, to give you some reference, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Lake Lanier is about an hour and some change away from Atlanta, if that makes sense. So it's not too far, but it's kind of like out there in the boonies or whatever. Oscarville was formed in the late 1800s in the Reconstruction era of life. Oscarville was made up of, it was a completely black community made up of different type of blacksmith, farmers, like they had churches, they had schools, they had everything. Their most important resource was farming at that time. It says in my research at that time that Oscarville's farms were the most thriving farms and the rest of the state was kind of like suffering. Like, so when it comes to farming, Oscarville, like up here, the rest of the state, like down here, like, okay, we can't grow crops. I don't know what's going on. Like our crops ain't giving what it's supposed to give, right? I don't know if that contributed to what happened to Oscarville, but I will say, in my personal opinion, I think that it did. But in the research that I did, they felt like it was important enough for that to be a fact, so that might have been like a determining factor into what happened to the people of Oscarville. In Oscarville in 1912, there is a woman by the name of May Crow who was found murdered and raped in the woods near Oscarville. So of course, just like any time back in the day, if there is a white woman that is murdered, the first place that all the white people are gonna run to the black communities and start blaming the black men or whoever in those communities, black children. I don't think that back in the day that they really cared if it was a child. Well, we know back in the day they didn't care if it was a child or a grown man. They wanted to blame somebody for this death or murder. So what happened is that white people decided to do in the neighboring community is to come at nighttime and have this huge mob, which they referred to at the time as night riders. I want to say that people in the KKK are referred to as night riders, but I don't know. I didn't do no deep dive into why they were called night riders, but I think there's a correlation there. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But as a black person, I don't care about getting KKK's history right. That's just, they call them night riders. There might be a correlation. There might not be a correlation to the KKK, but they ended up going into the town, and while these people were sleeping, they ended up like setting everything on fire. They specifically threw fire bombs into the church of Oscarville because the church was like the main place that people gathered when anything was happening in the town. If there was an emergency, anything like that, everybody would run to the church to discuss safety, things of that nature. So the first thing they burned down was the church and started burning down everything else. Within my research, it kind of like goes dead. There's no like personal accounts, but in recent months, 11 Alive, which is an Atlanta news station, like did a whole story. And there's actually a person that they found that is a direct descendant of one of the Oscarville people. His name is George Rucker. George Rucker is 4 generations into Oscarville. So his great grandfather told him about what happened the night of the Oscarville massacre. Basically, George's great grandfather, Bird Oliver. So Bird Oliver and his family ends up getting up and kind of like escaping. They are running from the mob. The mob is like chasing them through the woods and everything. Oliver's family is trying to do, they are trying to get to the Chattahoochee River. If you're from Georgia, we have this thing in Georgia where we say, sometimes if you're driving over the Chattahoochee River, because the Chattahoochee River is like the first thing before you like get into Atlanta, like the Chattahoochee River is like everywhere. Like it's a huge river. And sometimes when you drive over it, it smells awful. It smells like raw sewage. And like the legend is, oh, the Chattahoochee River stinks because there's so many dead bodies in there. Most of the time when people like are murdered or something like that, they're usually found like in the Chattahoochee. So I can see why that's an urban legend. Like, oh, the Chattahoochee stinks because there's dead bodies in there. Like, do I believe that? Absolutely, because I'm from Atlanta. Back to the story. Family is running towards the Chattahoochee River. The mob catches up with them at a bridge, and the family has one choice: swim or drown. And unfortunately, most of them drowned. Most of them jumped into the water. Some of them survived. Most of them drowned. One of the survivors is, of course, George Rucker's grandfather, Bird Oliver. He said that his brothers and sisters and siblings and other people, really important people to him, died. And so, you know, the ones that survived, they ended up going to a neighboring town called Gainesville. To put in perspective, Gainesville is like, it's literally right beside Lake Lanier. All of it is like an hour and some change away from whatever. But to give you some perspective, Gainesville is kind of near Flowery Branch, and that is like where the Falcons practice field and all that stuff is. If I'm wrong, my Georgia people, if I'm wrong out there, let me know. I'm not good with my highways and stuff, but I know for a fact that Gainesville, Flowery Branch, Falcons practice field or whatever is near there. So for people who are just like, I don't know what that means, like, girl, these people don't move to where the Falcons live back in the day. So they ended up going into Gainesville and starting like this brand new life. Bird Oliver ends up marrying his second wife, and they end up opening a school called the Beulah Worker House School, which is still in Gainesville to this day, which is absolutely cool and wonderful. Maybe something that me and my kids will check out if they like allow like tours or anything. I have to do a little more research, but yeah, so they ended up starting their life. I go back to the farming thing where I said this might have been what like kind of triggered, not that May Crow's death didn't trigger it, because it most definitely did, but I think other factors contributed to it, because once that massacre happened, Gainesville, the neighboring city, ended up becoming the poultry capital of the world. I think it still is considered the poultry capital of the world due to that massacre. That's why I say I think the farming, probably the hatred of the successful of the Black farmers is definitely a factor. It was more than just somebody being murdered. Just anytime, especially back in that era, when you see Black people thriving and surviving without white people, it's always a jealousy thing. They want to bomb and set fire and kill us and all of those things. But I think that it was going to happen regardless of if somebody was murdered or not. So after all that happened, many years later, like in the late 1950s, Beaufort Dam was built, and then shortly after, Lake Lanier was made. Lake Lanier in present day is considered dangerous because like all of those people's houses, 60-foot trees, things of that nature are literally up under the lake. So when people drown in the lake, most people who go to the lake who almost drown and don't actually drown, they feel like they're being pulled down. Now scientists are saying that they're being pulled down because there's so much debris up under the lake. People are getting tangled up in the debris and getting dragged down. Me, I'm a mystic, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I think that the people of Oscarville are like, we are sick of y'all, and they is dragging people down. They're getting their revenge on whoever is at that lake. They don't care if you're white, Black, whatever. Get off our lake, get off of our land, and they killing people. But that's just me. Since I posted the last video, the death toll from 2020 to recent 2023, like we literally had like 5 or 6 deaths at Lake Lanier back to back to back, and they were all completely different. One was like somebody drowning with their friends, another one was like a boating incident, another one was like somebody was standing on the dock and kind of tripped and fell into the water, or they were all different instances, but it all happened like back to back to back, like within weeks of each other, maybe even days for some of them. From 2020 to now, about 25 people have died, but that does not include the countless deaths that happened, you know, dying around Lake Lanier in the outer areas, and the like tons of boating accidents that it has. Like it's gotten so bad at Lake Lanier that Margaritaville, which is one of like the most Like if you're going to Lake Lanier, Margaritaville is one of the stops that you're definitely going to. Margaritaville built a fence at the lake's edge, basically saying like no patrons can swim on our property in this lake at all. Like straight up banned it. There is a water park in Lake Lanier as well. Water park still has the lake portion open, but swimming is prohibited. You cannot swim. You can look at it and maybe touch your feet in the water at the edge, but swimming is absolutely prohibited at the water park at this time. So with that being said, in the first video, I'm like, of course I believe it's cursed. Everybody in Atlanta knows it's cursed, but with these facts and stuff that I have now, which I'll leave a link to the 11 Live story in the description box, which was very detailed, by the way. I feel if I wasn't a believer like I was in the last video, because I was definitely a believer then, but I'm definitely like a believer now. Like y'all done took these black people's stuff and done murdered and pillaged and plundered these people, and just think that y'all just gonna put a lake on top and their spirits just gonna rest with y'all doing stuff like that. Like, y'all playing. I don't even know why. So as an ATLian, Georgia, Southern Belle, Georgia girl, Georgians know like Lake Lanier is dangerous, but everybody has to go at least once or twice. There's one time that I went, and I remember being a little kid and we were actually on the lake, and I remember being in the water, and I remember I wasn't old enough to like go too far in, but I just remember it was just mud. Like I could feel the, not like sand, like when you go to the beach it's sandy and you can kind of feel the sand. Like no, it felt like mud. I felt like my feet were getting stuck. I was not a happy kid on that lake. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Maybe that's where the sinking feeling or the stuck feeling comes from the people who almost drowned, is because it's literally nothing but like probably Georgia clay or something, like kind of like keeping you stuck in the water. Other than that, the next few times that I went, I specifically went to the water park. We did not go into the lake. The water park is absolutely fun. The little resort that they have out there, you can go horseback riding and do all those things. Like that stuff is actually fun and pretty safe because it's not in the lake. I actually absolutely had a great time. But you know, with all these deaths, the Georgia people are like, they have a petition going right now to have Lake Lanier drained and be done with it. But Lake Lanier is so big and so deep, I don't think that there's enough signatures in the world that can stop them from keeping Lake Lanier up, but that is just me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. This was my own little quick research that I did. It is always key, and I say this in every single video that I do, regardless of what the content is. Do your own research, find out things for yourself. But for me, that is it. That is the Curse of Lake Lanier Part 2. Sad and unfortunate freaking story, but that seems to be a common theme when it comes to black people in our history and the erasure of our history. Like the fact that it took me years to even get this sort of content is like almost insane. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Bye.